All right, we're just going to give people a minute here to get in. A few people still coming in. Hi, Stuart. Hi, Darren. Hi, Peter. Hey, everybody. Hi, Janae. I know, and they know. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. In today's format for this webinar, we want to encourage interaction from you, and mostly that will be via the chat. So in addition to your being able to ask questions of the panelists, we are going to pose some questions to you in the chat. So watch for those and please respond to those. And that will contribute to making today's dialogue an even richer experience for everyone here today. I am delighted and very grateful to introduce to you these three panelists today. Dr. Julian Birkinshaw, Dean Julian Birkinshaw is the Dean at Ivey Business School, and he is a distinguished scholar in strategy, innovation, and organizational agility. He's widely known for bridging that rigorous academic research with real-world challenges like we're always dealing with. Because he has an MBA and a PhD from Ivey, I'm thinking his return as dean in August of 2024 was a particularly meaningful homecoming. And prior to his appointment at Ivey, Julian spent 25 years at London Business School in a variety of leadership roles, including vice dean. He's the author of more than 15 books and more than 90 scholarly articles, including a recent book that may be very much related to our topic today. It's called Fast Forward, Make Your Company Fit for the Future. And you may have also seen Julian in or on the BBC, The Economist, Harvard Business Review, Thinkers 50 list, etc. Dr. Sharmla Chetty is here with us today too. She is the CEO of Duke Corporate Education, and her leadership has been described as, quote, both striking and purposeful. She was born in South Africa and has long carried a very deep commitment to social change, starting early in her career, including taking a strong stand against apartheid. She transitioned from her very distinguished time and tenure in banking to founding Education African operation in 2007. And she built that into a recognized hub for executive education on that continent. Sharmla served then as the president of global markets at Duke CE. And in October 2021, she stepped into the CEO role. She's passionate about scaling sustainable transformation, blending human-centered design with strategy, and preparing organizations and leaders to thrive in complexity and disruption, which is what we're all about today. Sharmla is quoted as saying, when we get the right people in the room and unite them around a common goal, we achieve phenomenal results. And I'm going to just say that we have the right people in this virtual room right now to help us figure out how to survive and thrive and set our respective exec ed organizations up for success in the long term. We also have with us, wonderfully, Dean of Executive Education and Professor of Digital Strategy, Analytics, and Innovation at IMD, Professor Misiek Piskorski. Misiek is widely respected and widely acclaimed for his work on platform strategy, social media, making digital transformation, and other kinds of complex topics accessible and actionable for organizations and obviously for the managers and leaders in those organizations. And although he often works with CEOs, C-level audiences, he specializes in transformations that span the entire organization. He's also the author of A Social Strategy, How We Profit from Social Media, which is a book grounded in research, case studies, and frameworks that help firms harness the power of social platforms. Before joining IMD in 2014, he was on faculty at both Stanford, GSB, and Harvard Business School. He brings a practical mindset into our webinar today. He's known for, quote, demystifying complex topics and helping leaders make informed, confident decisions, unquote. And I am confident that we're going to leave today feeling more informed and more confident about what to do to ensure the successful futures for ourselves and our exec ed operations. So I've had a long career in corporate learning and executive development, and it seems as though from day one, which was more than 30 years ago, turbulence and change has been the strategic topic of most importance. But today's turbulence and change, I believe, is different from that of previous periods. And, you know, we're dealing in particular with, sorry, my phone is ringing here. We're dealing in particular with these geopolitical disruptions that are different from the past, right? There are trade disruptions and visa restrictions, realignment of relationships among countries, and even a very different kind of pressure on universities right now, at least in the US. And that effect trickles out to other parts of the world as well. And of course, the increasing polarization that's resulting from all of this. And then on top of that are these technological disruptions. The most prominent one, of course, at the moment is Gen AI, which is already having a huge impact, and it'll undoubtedly have more impact in the years to come that we don't know what that impact is going to be yet. We can speculate. And this is all on top of the areas of change that we always have to deal with, the sort of de rigueur turbulence and change, shifts in the marketplace, changes in the competitive landscape, evolving client expectations, et cetera. So we can all benefit from getting some insights from people with particular expertise in these areas. And so I want to jump into the questions now. We want to first focus on geopolitics, right? Geopolitics and the operational reality. And Daniele is going to put a question in the chat for the audience. I'd like to have you respond to that as well. So take a look at that. In the meantime, a kind of a three-part question for our panelists. How are geopolitical tensions concretely affecting your operations? And as you answer that question, if you could include the effect you're seeing on clients, your operations and your clients, and if you could each share one strategic pivot or adjustment you've made in the past 12 months directly because of these geopolitical factors. And Julian, could I start with you in terms of answering that one?
Yeah, happy to do so. And by way of context, I think everyone's heard of Ivey. We are the top business school in Canada. I guess there's at least one other school would also claim that title, but we're going to claim it for the benefit of today anyway. And we have a small operation in Hong Kong and a tiny operation in the Middle East. And so when you ask that question, of course, most of our Canadian clients are very happy to sort of continue to work with us on the same basis that they have in the past. They are fascinated to hear our points of view on what is happening in the world and the impact that all these geopolitical tensions are having on business. And we are absolutely building in additional content around strategic foresight, around essentially trying to build resilience when an operation sits in Canada and suddenly it's hit by these crazy tariffs coming at us from south of the border. But we're not seeing a dramatic change in what they are actually asking us to do and where they want us to run our business. And so in some ways, we are doing our best to kind of take advantage of this situation. Canada's brand is that of a sort of a relatively small but attractive place to go, and we're doing our best to sort of woo a few additional clients to that. But I'll be honest, I mean, it hasn't made a huge impact one way or the other in terms of actually bringing in, for example, new clients from the US. I mean, I've got much more to say, but let me hear from the others as well, if that's okay.
Thanks, Julian. Yeah, Sharmla?
Good. Thank you so much. I think I have the opposite to this. Of course, it certainly impacted our business across the world. I think for us, because Duxie operates in 6 locations and we deliver programs and client solutions in 84 countries around the world. And there is definitely a challenge when it comes to currency and tariffs around the world. So one of the most significant pivots we had to do was we've made by moving from program delivery to building long-term capability ecosystems for our client. For example, when geopolitical tensions happened, we also understood in certain markets, like in South Africa, there was a currency challenge. in Europe, there was tariffs as well. We didn't just reschedule the programs, but we redesigned the programs, learning architecture, but we also brought in the context of what was happening in real time into the programs. And the second piece around this is that when we understood that cost was a huge driver and change in our clients, we were able to pivot to say, how could we bring faculty closer to the client and readjust the pricing strategy? I think what we did really well, we changed the conversation from program quarter delivery and cost reductions to looking at how do we play as an eco player with the client as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Sharmla. Misiek?
So, as you know, IMD is quite a distinctive business school in that vast majority of what we do is executive education, and we operate globally. I don't know if it's 84 or 87 or 82 countries, but it is a very large number of countries. And we're seeing two very opposing forces. On one hand, like many of you have pointed out, Brian just pointed this a second ago, customers do take longer time to make decisions because there's just so much more uncertainty associated with investments, and the investments are, you know, in plants as well as in education take much longer. Having said that, we are witnessing just incredible amount of interest from our clients in geopolitics. So we have delivered at least since beginning of this year, I want to say about 15 programs that were just focused on geopolitics, where people are beginning to ask questions around, so how do we deal with this? How do we deal with trade restrictions? And we do have a number of people at IMD who specialize in trade, which would have been really helpful to a number of our partner organizations to help them figure this out. Not least, you know, Switzerland was slapped with a 39% tariff on cheese, so we did also have to deal with that, and because that actually had profound implications on the Swiss economy. But there is that big component, and there is also a number of our clients that are coming back to us and say, you know, it seems like this is going to go for a while, and particularly once they start bringing, you know, the trade uncertainty with general uncertainty about the American economy, you put AI, you put maybe some questions around what's going to happen to sustainability, and how do we equip leaders in order to really begin to deal with that on an ongoing basis. We've also been able to turn some of this into open programs, so we have actually rolled out some open programs on geopolitics, and again, helping people understand what's kind of core, what's really underneath, right? Because one of our fundamental approaches is to say, look, there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty, there's a tremendous amount of unknowns, but can we focus on the knowns in the sea of unknowns? And if you take them as kind of your guiding anchors, you might actually be able to get somewhere. So bit of both, you know, more uncertainty, delay, more uncertainty, more demand for our offerings.
Thank you. I mean, you know, I think at the highest level, one of the things we're hearing is that even as we have to adjust our own operations and figure out what to do, we're supposed to also teach and help our clients do the same thing. So it adds to the complexity and difficulty, but it also means we have a much more significant impact, positive impact as well. If we look at some of the comments, you know, we're hearing everything from not really affecting us yet, from Monica, who happens to be in Mexico, to, you know, people in the US saying the visa disruptions are preventing people from coming to programs, open enrollment programs. They're canceling out because they can't get their visas. We're experiencing a little bit of that with our UNICON conference as well, although we do have over 200 people coming, so that should be great. But also government clients in the US. I do some teaching as well for some government clients, and yesterday I got the message that all the upcoming programs are canceled. I had 8 sessions scheduled, all are canceled. So there are some very real and very much, you know, not positive impacts happening to some of our member schools here. And Meredith, I'm so impressed you're able to walk on your treadmill and participate in this at the same time. Meredith says that, you know, a strategic pivot is trying to work with more clients outside the US. I mentioned to the panelists earlier, as we were just sort of chatting before we started, that I've had a couple of member schools tell me that clients, US schools tell me that clients from other parts of the world are opting out of working with schools in the US. So all kinds of different things happening here. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else. The uncertainty in the market, as Nuan is saying, of course, anytime there's uncertainty, it's, you know, it's not a positive thing. It makes people change their behavior and become much more cautious. And that might impact spending on L&D agendas. Any comments, Julian? Did you have?
Yeah, so I mean, and I had a guest in my class yesterday. I still find a time for a little bit of executive teaching, even though I'm the dean. And she's her name's Linda Hasenfrat. She runs one of Canada's biggest automotive parts companies, so obviously hugely affected by what's going on. And we got into a very good conversation about strategic agility in terms of the skills or the capabilities, if you like, that any company operating across borders has to build. And this notion that, of course, you have to be able to sort of, exactly as Sharmla says, sort of go to your clients and meet them where they are in terms of local for local production. She talked about, this lady last night talked about that. She talked a lot about essentially retooling to make sure that your technologies, your capabilities are adaptive to whatever kind of future comes along. She talked a lot about conservatism in terms of financing, in terms of not stretching yourself too far, because uncertainty brings these, huge risks in case you're too stretched too thin. So I was fascinated to listen to this lady talk about her 25,000 person automotive components business and almost reflect that back on the strategies that executive education businesses like ours have to adopt. So I don't know if that's helpful, but it's an interesting parallel, kind of practicing what you preach.
I know. I was thinking of the practicing what you preach phrase, Julian, because we often comment that we're not the greatest at doing that. But if we can do more of that, it will behoove us to do so. And a lot of times, depending on the structure of the school and the practice, the margins or contributions from the non-degree exec ed are swept away at the school level. And so you don't have the funds to reinvest in yourself often. But if you're, just thinking about the exec ed, but for the, at the dean's level, to recognize that and know that reinvestment in the non-degree exec ed is sometimes pretty critical as well.
I mean, just a quick context. I mean, IMD and Duke corporate education are very different than, I guess, most of the business schools who are part of universities who then have small executive education businesses. I mean, at Ivey, we're a little bit of a hybrid in that we run our executive education business as a freestanding entity where we are actually allowed to keep all of our profits rather than the university stealing it away. So so that is one of, frankly, given the challenges on degree education, one of the huge benefits that we have in terms of our competitors in the Canadian context.
Thank you. Before we move on to another sort of angle, I want to just open it back up. Sharmla, is there any more you wanted to say about this topic?
I think the piece is that if you work in multiple markets, you actually have the opportunity. And if you have, a faculty network that is quite broad-based, and in that market, you can actually work around the tariff challenges as well. I think here it is being relevant in the context of where the client is, and also in the context of real-time issues that the client is facing. The second observation is that we had to adapt the curriculum based on the context of the environment. What do they really need? Being more agile to the client as well. So a lot of times we design a long journey. We had to change that and be relevant in the context of what was happening. I think for me, it was really having the teams on the ground that understand the challenges that the clients are dealing with and adapting quite quickly. It was key to work around the tariffs challenge as well.
Then for me, just a final thing that I've noticed is just more and more schools reaching out to us for collaborations. I think the sort of the spirit of working together is just better than ever, and it's just really opening doors, and it's just truly fantastic at how various collaborations now work out in ways that might not have been possible before. So super happy to see this.
Yeah, I think I've noticed that too. It feels like there's a lot more discussion around collaborations, and with UNICON being this consortium of business schools, I'm getting more requests for information about how could I connect with this school and collaborate. So I don't have actual data on that, but I'm anecdotally seeing increase in that as well. I don't know if any of you have any of the participants can want to share anything more about collaboration in the chat, but that could be helpful as well. So one of the other obviously large, big turbulent areas of turbulence that we have is in the technological realm. And in the technological realm, the biggest one is arguably Gen AI. And we in UNICON have two research projects going on in AI, in the realm of AI, and we'll be publishing those and have webinars on those. But we know it's a really important topic right now. And so we want to address it today as well. And so I'd like to ask our panelists to address in particular one really, really important question when it comes to AI and what it means for exec ed, Gen AI. Because generative AI can now deliver personalized content, instant coaching, etc., what is the irreplaceable value of university-based exec ed when content is increasingly commoditized and readily available at the touch of a button, or maybe more accurately stated, at the writing of a great prompt? How do we differentiate ourselves in this realm? And Misiek, I was hoping to start with you on this one.
Sure. I mean, so I have three answers to this. So the first one is, look, we at IMD have really chosen to embrace this. So one of the new products that has been coming out of IMD is this idea of custom solutions at scale, where we take something that is, we think, quite unique to IMD, is our ability to co-create journeys with clients and really deploy this into a product that now can be scalable. So we are now working with a number of large organizations where you have the same IMD magic that we deliver in the classroom, and now we can deliver it at scale using tremendous amount of diagnostics that we've developed, as well as Gen AI, that really creates a very, very highly customized, but also very highly interactive environment, something that you'd normally see in the classroom. So that's one component. Second one is that we've also embraced it into a lot of our face-to-face journeys. I am really struggling to find any of, for example, custom program or even open program where you don't have AI. I mean, I think all of our programs now have AI in one form or another. Some of them will have, digital coaching journeys. Some of them will have nudging journeys. We've actually spent a lot of time with our coaching excellence practice to build AI coaches that really get you to execute on what you promised you're going to do in a course. Or we have developed a number of AI advisors that help leaders apply what they're learning in the classroom, both before or after. And so that's the sort of the second component. We're also bringing this in the classroom. And I think what that has done is really forced our faculty to begin to think about impact and what is unique in the classroom. And so one of the things that we're seeing is really the emphasis on getting leaders to start thinking more about themselves. And so that opened up a lot of space for us to really drive a lot of personal transformations with leaders, because that is something that I think we still need human to human. I think humans are getting better at using machines for kind of basic kind of consulting or basic coaching insight. But if you're really trying to drive deep transformation, that's where we're really seeing tremendous value of face-to-face. And if anything, again, we're seeing our clients to ask more of that, because more of the sort of typical learning can be now integrated much more with machines.
So, Misiek, I think, for a lot of years, there's been talk about this organization-wide, enterprise-wide kind of initiative. And many of us dabbled in it and with some successes here and there, but it sounds like you're doing it at IMD on a larger scale. And I wanted to have you just elaborate a little bit on what does it take to do this? You've mentioned you're using Gen AI, you're using diagnostic tools. What else would you say are the critical success factors in creating this kind of initiative?
So strangely enough, what you need is exactly what we would teach any organization that came to us for a digital transformation course, which is you need a very, very solid strategy and you need a very solid backbone on investment. So we do actually have a dedicated group of people at IMD right now. Some of them are here and some of them are elsewhere in the world. Who are our digital transformation practice. And it's even espoused in our strategy going forward in IMD that we aspire to be as much of a face-to-face executive education institute as well as an AI-enabled asynchronous institute. And so that really takes proper investments in AI infrastructure. We employ now data scientists and we employ machine learning specialists and we employ people who are UX and UI specialists and apply to AI. So it really is. My recommendation is please don't dabble in this a little bit, because if you dabble in this just a little bit, you're going to get just a little bit and you're probably going to spend a lot of money. It needs to be a concerted effort of how you're thinking about delivering this to market at scale, because again, you're trying to, putting things to work in a classroom for 25 people is not that hard, at least not for people in this room. But making something that you can deploy with 25,000 people in a different language, in a location where where you may be far away from the location where you're deploying it, that everything needs to be stable, everything needs to work with excellence, and I think that's where we're trying to go.
So one of the things I hear in your response is, in addition to the strategy and the investment, is you have to have the different kinds of talent now.
Absolutely.
And pretty significant investment in different kinds of talent.
Yeah. Absolutely. And also it's a little bit of a move with respect to your faculty. I think our faculty are also beginning to develop a little bit of a ambidexterity in the sense that they are both thinking about, how do I excel in the classroom? What are some of the best ways I drive transformation in the classroom? And then also, how do I deploy this at scale when things are more asynchronous? And I am not going to be in classroom, but I am going to be really thinking about with AI and Gen AI. And then how do I also bring this all together so some of the tools that I've developed at scale can also still be brought into the classroom?
Thank you, Misiek. I would like to actually add on to this as well. I think what we do at Duke CE, we invite tech companies, not just as providers of technology or, as a client, but as a strategic advisor, helping us to understand the future of work and where learning is heading. What are they actually building as well? I think, on emerging trends, and also on the responsible use of AI as well, and ethical frameworks. And I think what are they seeing from a learning gap as well, including big consulting companies, as Misiek talked about the big ecosystem, we can use it. But what are we learning from tech companies? Just to build onto that as well.
It's a great additional nuance to that. Thank you, Sharmla. Julian?
Yes. So I think we haven't sunk as much money into this as I think IMD has, but we do have a digital team, and we've done a deep dive into almost like the theory of learning and how this is being challenged by AI. And if you'll just give me 30 seconds to just sort of highlight the basic thesis here, which everyone will recognize that AI threatens the way that people learn in a number of ways, because obviously it offers the potential to essentially outsource, almost like substitute the development of skills. It allows you to shortcut the learning process around sort of the deep concepts that are important to business. And if you use it too much, it actually gives you very sterile answers to the questions that you're asking. And so what we're trying to do is to develop a model of learning, which in some ways brings us back almost to where we started. Ivey is famous, if it's famous for anything, for its case method, which is this belief that the classroom setting is the place where students, whether they're executives or degree students have an opportunity to actually build those critical thinking skills, the ability to share an idea, to challenge an idea, to make decisions in a classroom setting under conditions of uncertainty and so forth. We call it structured social learning. And that sort of better understanding of what it is that makes learning unique is allowing us to actually then use AI in the right ways. So, rather than using AI to give you sort of smart answers to questions, we actually want to use the AI to ask the smart questions so that the learners actually then take on the responsibility themselves. I mean, that's a pretty obvious point, but it's a very fundamental kind of shift in the underlying thinking. So we've developed a product which is still in prototype stage. We call it ABLE, Artificial Intelligence Boosted Experiential Learning. It's an acronym. And that, I mean, it's been under development for 8 months. This is a way of essentially simulating the case discussion, if you like, but with an individual essentially surrounded by an AI professor and a bunch of AI bot fellow students or participants. And if any of you have ever used, I think it's Notebook LM has that podcast that you can create out of an article. It's a version of that. And so the idea is that for our asynchronous programs, the participant can almost like recreate the Ivey classroom, sitting in whatever country in the world without actually being there. And then for our in-person programs, it actually becomes a way of getting up to speed on, let's say we're doing a case study the next day, just to sort of try out your ideas in this simulated setting before you then come into the classroom. So it's a fundamental philosophy that the case method is more important than ever as a way of stimulating high quality learning because basic knowledge is commoditized. So thank you for bearing with me, but it does take a few minutes to unpack that.
And Julian, and I have to say that we're from a distance very, very much admiring what you're doing because, one of the big concerns that we have is that, the case method on which so many business schools are built are dead. Mm-hmm. And honestly, these days, I've written God knows how many of case studies in my life, and I continuously used to get emails from people saying, I'm still using your case, it's 10 years old, but the fundamental question you're posing there is just so interesting that it still works. Mm. And this year, I must have gotten at least 4 or 5 emails from people who said, I can no longer use your case because people always guess the right solution. They used to be, so the right solution was A, but people always bought C, but now ChatGPT figures out the right solution and there's no discussion, right? So to me, this is actually very, very scary. This is a little bit of a beginning of an end. I also want to post a link in chat, which comes from a recent study. This particular one, I believe, comes from GPT, or it doesn't matter. One is from Anthropic and one is from OpenAI, both of which show you the usage of AI for the purposes what do people do? And one of the first things that you hopefully see when you click on this is tutoring and teaching comprises 10% of what people do. And if you add how to do something, we're very close to 20. So I do look, when I look at this picture, one of the big concerns that I have is, that's our closest competitor coming right up. So to me, the fundamental question is, of course, we know that a lot of these numbers are biased by university students using this, but if we even strip university students, we still are faced with the situation that the executive is going to go and ask ChatGPT first before she comes to us, right? And so we continually need to innovate on this going in the future. Moreover, there's some studies that recently come out of Anthropic. Again, what happens when humans begin to work with agents rather than other humans? And you find some absolutely stunning numbers, such as, people no longer ask their seniors for advice. So mentoring just goes out of the window, right? People no longer turn to their colleagues first to socialize with them. They go to ChatGPT, right? So there's these sort of fundamental changes that we're beginning to experience. And again, to my mind, where does this leave us, right? Which is when people are not turning to other humans, maybe a little connected to your initial question, where do we go in this world?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Misiek, too, for sharing that link. I think it's important for all of us to keep reading and keep looking at what's out there and what's at the forefront so that we're not caught off guard as things change dramatically and rapidly. You know, I do think we've probably all experienced that kind of, I'm going to call it magic, that happens that can happen, sometimes happens when people are together in a room in a great learning experience that can't quite happen in the same way if you're doing it virtually or, you know, ChatGPT is doing it for you. And at the same time, what I'm hearing is that that environment, that in-person environment where this magic can happen, the magic can be enhanced by AI, by generative AI and other technologies. And so perhaps we're just going to get better and better at what we do because of the enhancements we can make. One analogy I often think of when you think about, can this Gen AI thing and other technologies just completely replace what we do? I like to think about vacations, right? I have places I want to go, vacations I've been on. And when I think about having that vacation experience, I don't think it can ever, no matter how good technology gets, it can never replace an actual vacation. And I think there's something there when it comes to the in-person learning as well. In the chat, by the way, folks, we have a question for you, which is, how are you articulating value when competing for learning and development budgets against AI-enabled alternatives? So if you can pop in there and respond to that. Mark is sharing that AI is a tool. It doesn't take away from human interaction. They're looking at ways to use AI in their live programs, and they have other offerings that are in the online and asynchronous courses. By the way, in the July, we're going to have a workshop at MIT. I don't think we have the dates settled yet, but it's on this very topic of, in this world, high tech and AI world, what does it mean to be human, and where is the human factor important, and how do we make sure we're keeping that in mind and leveraging that?
And Melanie, and if you don't mind, I'm going to do also a little plug for the Directors Conference coming up at IMD in April. Which is also very, very much connected in this topic. So if it's okay, I'm going to post the links just in case so people remember to look at this. And we're actually working on a very exciting schedule for all of you to come and bring as much of wisdom to us as possible so we can exchange on that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for doing that. Julian.
Yeah, I'd love to just jump in on this because, to what extent are these new competitors coming along and eating a lunch or challenging our business models? And that's a question on my mind. I was at it's called the Academy of Management Conference in Copenhagen this summer. Many of you will at least know what that is. And that was the big topic of conversation in at least 3 different panels I'd attended. And my belief, and obviously this is wishful thinking as well as a genuine belief, is that actually a lot of these AI-based providers of executive learning solutions are going to fail badly because, and indeed we've seen this before. I mean, the history of EdTech is, littered with, companies that came along and tried to kill us off and failed. And many of them have lost a lot of value. And it really does remind me that the unique value of a business school, and perhaps we're going to get into this in more detail in a minute, but we do genuinely have an edge in terms of the quality of the in-person interactivity that we create, which no EdTech solution is ever going to replicate. And your point about the holiday is well taken. We all taught and learned through COVID, and frankly, it was just a blur. I taught entire courses online through that period, and I don't remember anything about them. It's almost as if it didn't happen. And so if I, as the faculty, don't remember it, I suspect the learners didn't either. So I do think clinging on to, at the core of most of our programs, I mean, you can't always do this, that face-to-face bit, buttressed with various online things as well, is actually the central value proposition that's never going to go away.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you. I know COVID seems like this incredibly long, difficult period that never happened. I don't know. It's like,
weird.
Yeah. Sharmla, did you have more you wanted to offer on that?
No, I think just building on Julian, I think we're seeing a lot of participants around the world saying they want the human-centered experience. They can access content via AI, but what is, they can't, the human-centered collaboration, knowledge, and even being on a university campus can't be replaced. I'm seeing a lot of that happening when we are engaging with our client base as well. So I think, as Julian and Misiek said, it is true because you can't replace the human-centered experiences. And I think it is a challenge when you are going on a platform. So I'm agreeing with that.
So I'm agreeing with both of you, but I just literally came out of a conversation today with a CHRO who said all of that is true, but Misiek, if I focus on this, I can only send 300, 400 people to your programs. And the challenge that we're getting right now is I want the IMD experience. I want the interaction. I want the kind of deep transformational experiences, but I want this now for 5,000 people, for 10,000 people. And so come back with me with that. So we also have to remember that in many ways, we were a very exclusive product, right? We were a product for the select few. And I think the democratization is now deeply expected of us. And in some ways, I fundamentally believe we perhaps owe it to the world. Because if I think about the places where we haven't operated as an industry, I think immediately of India, and and how many people in India would benefit from executive education. I think there's these statistics that say something like 35 million people in India are incapable of going to university simply because there's just not enough universities in India, right? So you sort of start asking questions, well, how many leaders are there in India who would benefit from executive education and haven't really had a chance to access it? And partly because we're too expensive, and partly because we don't have enough capacity. So I do think we have to begin to ask questions about how do we, move into that world. And here is really where the digital and AI components can really help us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, point well taken that we have the opportunity to help develop people and give access mostly through technology in this wide way that you're talking about, reaching hundreds of thousands of people. And so the better we can get at technology assisted learning, the more impact we'll have, even as we may also know that some of the very best learning seems to happen in that face-to-face environment, but we can get better and better and better at the technology assisted learning also. Yeah.
And one final thought on that, if you don't mind, which is, and of course I cannot disagree with the point that you, Melanie, and Misiek just made, which is figuring out a way of scaling up AI-enabled learning is the biggest single challenge. And I guess the point is that we're in the sort of the foothills of the Gen AI revolution right now, and it feels like lots and lots of new stuff is coming along, and we're all creating our own little solutions, most of which won't actually end up being that great. But it's only by trying these things out and really stress testing them with your clients that you build the skills to allow you to figure out what comes next. So I'm very keen, and this is what I tell everyone at Ivey, is push on whatever AI experiments or pilots you're doing, and show me what works and show me what doesn't, because it's only by doing that we stay sort of at the kind of cutting edge of what is possible. If we don't do that, then we do actually risk being disrupted by well-backed Californian edtech companies. So.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think we should undersell either the research focus of universities. I mean, universities are often at the forefront of what's happening in these different fields, and we can and should be at the forefront of what's happening in this one so that we can do the very best at it. So I think the research is important too. So lots of good comments in the chat, and we want to have open up for questions for you to ask the panelists. And Shalini has put one in here already, so I'm going to ask it of you. Her question is, beyond AI, what are other technologies and tools that will disrupt our industry?
Gosh.
On that one?
I mean, so a lot of schools, Ivey included, have experimented with virtual reality and augmented reality. And I kind of love it and hate it at the same time, I'll be honest, because I love it in terms of it's cool. And when you go through one of these simulations, the quality of the technology allows you now to have that, that immersive experience. It feels as though it's not ready for prime time. It's not scalable. And it's a lot of work to create what is ultimately quite a narrow thing. So I'm not ruling it out, but I do think that we're not yet there. Perhaps when the latest glasses technology gives you almost the same experience with relatively low cost, it's possible. So I do see that the Gen AI revolution is the one that we should be focusing on. I'm sure there's other technologies as well. At the moment, I'm putting virtual reality, augmented reality on the back burner.
Okay. Other thoughts on that one, Sharmla? Or
yes, I think building on what on this is that I think what we are doing, we are playing with immersive technologies, VR, AR, XR, and metaverse. I think for us, it is moving from classroom-centric to experience-centric. And we're also seeing that we're learning a lot with our clients because they are buying the tools, especially in mining companies, and saying to us that we need to bring immersive simulations that they already have and into the learning classroom. As a good example is that, one particular client said, can we bring digital twins into the real environment? But they have it already. So can we actually bring that into the entire learning experience? And the second piece is the learning platform with skills marketplace as well. We're seeing a lot that happens in that space. And then the last piece is the collaboration and social learning tools. That's happening, with our clients. They already have it, but how do they integrate this into the learning experience? They don't want to say, hey, you want to do the whole thing. They talk about this as a collaborative marketplace. Bring us what you can. We already have some as well. So think about this as playing, in an ecosystem player versus just giving us, one thing, with multiple players. This is what I see a lot happening right now with our clients.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Misiek?
Yeah, I'm going to take a slightly different tack at this, right? I am very, very carefully observing this whole debate of, AI automating jobs and what that actually does to people right at the beginning of their careers. And we're beginning to get some signals that perhaps people who are graduating from undergraduate degrees and increasingly maybe from master's degrees are finding it a little bit harder to get jobs, which because of the levels of automation of these jobs. And perhaps this is not an exec ed question, but I think it will begin to have some impact on schools that have both undergraduate and graduate degrees in executive education, because I worry that we're going to see some depletion of demand for the sort of flagship undergraduate graduate programs in business. And what does that then mean for the executive education people who do rely on the sort of big infrastructure of the universities? And as that big infrastructure begins to shrink, is that a threat, right? And is there enough sort of volume that a executive education school associated with university might have to support itself? So the different, it's not direct disruption, not direct technological disruption, but sort of indirect, running its course through fixed costs, and it won't affect outfits like Duke CE. It won't affect us as much, but I do worry that it might affect other business schools. So something just to keep an eye on, just to see how the rest of the university is doing, and maybe how you begin to again synchronize some of the experiences that you have on executive education side with master's programs, with undergraduate programs.
Yeah, and if and as that effect takes place in the marketplace, and degree programs become less and less in demand, and perhaps our universities become perceived as less and less valuable, could be an opportunity for the non-degree exec ed, right? But to the extent that it's affecting the brand, and we in exec ed, non-degree exec ed, often rely on the brand of our school. it may be a big challenge for us. So I think we can look to schools like IMD and operations like Duke CE for ideas on how to manage in that kind of environment. It's good to think about that scenario.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, go on.
Sorry, go ahead, Julian. Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm just going to speak for the sort of university-based business schools. I'm sure there's a few others here on the call. I mean, it's too soon to be sure in terms of the demand for our degree graduates, in terms of what are the jobs, what is the quality and quantity of jobs that young professionals have. But the evidence so far is that market is softening. It's not falling off a cliff, but that market is softening. The banks and the consulting companies and the audit companies are just simply hiring fewer graduates right now. So I don't foresee a dramatic change. These things always take longer than the crazy the crazy gurus tell us they're going to. But it is absolutely almost irrefutable that AI is going to reduce the number of traditional professional jobs in the categories that we know. Creative destruction tells us that jobs get killed off and new jobs get replaced. We know which jobs are going to get squeezed. We don't yet know what jobs are going to come along in the future. So one of the pieces of work we're doing, I'm sure many of the people on the call are doing the same, is just trying to tap into what does that workplace of the future look for our young graduates.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I know you've already touched on this question, panelists, but in your responses to the previous questions, but I do want to throw out the opportunity for you to say a few final words about, in this era of this type of turbulence and change we're experiencing now, how should we in non-degree executive education be rethinking skills, mindsets, curricula, partnerships? How and what should we be rethinking so that we are well equipped to help future leaders develop the skills that they need to navigate and shape uncertainty, especially when, as you've just mentioned, many of these skills don't yet exist. We might not even know what they're going to be. So if you could each say a final few words on that, and I want to open up for a couple of audience questions as well. Sharmla, you want to start us off on that one?
Good. So thank you so much. I think the first real challenge is who can translate strategy into measurable behavior change at scale. You heard this word speed and impact, and a truly human experience. I think that for me is fundamental key. And just to summarize this, for me, we all need to think about playing in an ecosystem. We are no longer single players. And Misiek talked about this. We are ecosystem orchestrators. If we want to see this change, how do we play together and combine our strengths to deliver the experience that is human and accessible and transformative? I think for me, that's important.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. That is really insightful. Remembering that we are part of an ecosystem, and everything we put into that system changes that system to some extent and creates even more complexity and more opportunities. Julian, what would you say?
One part of your question was about skills development, the skills of the future. And it's often useful to use historical analogies, right? So the one that I like the best is the invention of the spreadsheet. And obviously that changed dramatically our capacity to do sophisticated financial analysis, or indeed analysis on pretty much everything. So the history of human evolution is of machines taking over tasks that we used to do ourselves. So we absolutely shouldn't shy away from that. We should absolutely embrace as much as possible using these tools, Gen AI now, to take over things that we used to assume were ours. And the challenge, nobody's really cracked this yet, is to the extent that you do that, how much do you really need to still understand what that machine is doing in order to be able to use it effectively. And that is, I mean, I'm saying that's a puzzle. It's not a puzzle. It's a sort of a practical question that we've got to keep working through. Somebody's got to understand how the spreadsheet's put together. Somebody's got to understand what it is that Gen AI is actually spitting out at the end when you give it a job to do. But does everybody have to understand that? I'm not completely sure they do, right? I mean, there's lots of things I don't understand, and I can still do my job as long as I've got experts around me who can get to the bottom of it. So I mean, that's just one historical example of the need to actively encourage our participants to use these tools, use them smartly. We want to give them the tools to use them so that they can actually focus their time on the more exciting and more value-added parts of their job. But just with the caveat, they've got to make sure they understand, or somebody understands what that machine is doing on their behalf.
One way I found myself sometimes thinking about that as new technologies came out, big data, large learning models, social media, when that was more new, is, there's sort of what does the CEO need to know about this?
Right.
About it. And then what does the person in charge of that field, that department, if you will, in the organization need to know? So thank you for that. I think that was a really good insight. And Misiek?
Yeah, I mean, I really want to key off of a lot of things that Julian said, and sort of say that we've been really trying to embrace this. So we do have an MBA program, and a very strong MBA program in Europe. And one of the things that we have really done in this program is to focus what we call transversal skills, because we know these are people in the 20s and maybe early 30s, and we need to educate them for the next 40 years. And of course, they will be educated later on, but how do we prepare them for that future that Julian was describing? So we have basically first agreed on a bunch of principles, a bunch of transversal skills, and I believe we had 10 of them. Some of them are like visioning and scenario planning, asking good questions, decision-making, divergent and convergent thinking, quantifying strategy, structured problem solving, things like this. And we literally designed each and every course so it hits all 10 of them at the same time. And so rather than saying, here is, marketing, here is organizational behavior, here's supply chain, to say, how can we teach you to say that, divergent and convergent thinking appears in organizational behavior, in supply chain, and in strategy. And actually, things that you pick up in one side will be useful in another function too. And so how can we get you to think across? And I think that's what Julian was trying to convey, that sort of that higher level of thinking that, quite honestly, machines are developing rather fast. And so how do we kind of make sure that we catch up there and make sure that we're staying a few steps behind? And those transversal thinking is one of the ways in which we saw the ability to get us there.
Yeah, so thank you for reminding us that even with all this change, some fundamentals remain important, right? This cross silo or transversal idea, identifying the skills that are needed for the new environment, and probably also establishing learning objectives is still an important foundational kind of capability. So some things remain the same even as lots of things change. Real quickly, a question from the audience from Junaid. How do you assess the talk about skill development beyond exec ed to increase job security? And then I don't know, Junaid, you said or move. I don't know if you want to jump in and explain a little more what you were trying to ask there.
No, I mean, thank you, Melanie. Thank you for the great insights, by the way. I mean, it's a great webinar. Well, what I wanted to kind of pivot or ask, get reflections on is, executive education has focused on more leadership, obviously, and managerial competencies, etc., traditionally out of the business schools. But now there is this talk in town, more skills-based kinds of training or developmental initiatives, and whether they would be apt for business schools or not, or it's somebody else's job, or whether exec ed kind of is melting into that area. It's an area that's debated, as you all know, I'm sure. I just wanted to get the reflections of our dear panelists on that. Thank you.
So as quickly as possible, because we're down to our last minute or two.
I'll take 20 seconds. I mean, there's a huge market for executive education with many different players, and I do worry that, perhaps worry is the wrong word, but we, executive education associated with business schools, our price point actually makes it quite difficult for us to compete in the skill development part of the market, because there are many skills development organizations, training organizations who do that stuff really well at a fraction of what we're prepared to charge. So I'm not sure that's the right answer, but it's a very pragmatic point I think that we should bear in mind.
Thank you for that perspective, Sharmla.
I think one of the things we have to do is align to where the client is going. And the piece around what we are seeing is that in terms of the leadership programs that we are doing, clients are already thinking about future jobs. So when we build the leadership architecture and the framework or the talent framework, we are building in and aligning to what they want. And, you talked about that the times, how do you teach leadership skills and the alignment to future roles or future jobs? You have to align it, because what we are seeing in some markets, in particular, they're saying is that if AI is going to take away these roles, how are you building new skills and new capabilities to actually address that? And so we had to adjust quite quickly. A good example is in one particular client, we were training 1,000 women on a program, and all of a sudden they said the talent framework changed because these jobs will not exist. We had to adapt to new jobs, particularly around green skills, and build those green skills into the training. So we had to look at what was not just the organization, but what particularly was the country skills gap, and align this to the country skills gap, I think, and also bring, faculty that knew that could actually facilitate these green skills as well.
Yeah, the model, Duke CE model makes that sort of more feasible, right?
Absolutely.
Graphical locations and a different educator group than a core faculty group at a university.
Yeah, absolutely so.
Misiek, anything about that? And then we'll call it to a close.
All I'm going to say is that the talk about skill development beyond executive is on the mind of every CHRO I talk about. So this is something that we're going to have to pay very close attention to. And someone was saying so many new jobs are going to show up, and how we're going to educate people for these jobs when we have never seen these jobs is again a challenge for us that we're going to have to be very carefully monitoring, particularly our faculty.
So much to think about and do, and so much fodder for future webinars like this. So thank you, Sharmla, Julian, Misiek. This has been really insightful and helpful, I'm sure, to every single person on the webinar, including myself. And I'm going to call us to a close because we're a couple minutes over, but really grateful to you. And thanks everybody for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks, Birch.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.